And we are ready to start the live stream now. I will now call to order the study session meeting of July 20th, 2020. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting is being held electronically and members of the council are participating remotely pursuant to the council's electronic participation policy. Public access to the meeting is available on the local government access channel 8 for Comcast subscribers, on the city's YouTube channel online, and by telephone using the call-in numbers posted on the meeting agenda. Joanna, will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Leidy.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford will be absent. Councilmember Witkovich.
Here.
Councilmember Peterson.
Here.
Councilmember Downing.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Becky, you want to unmute and say that again?
No. I'm here.
Councilmember Goff.
Here.
Councilmember Duran Malika will be late, and Councilmember Escobar.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have 2 items on our agenda for this study session. The first one is the municipal court updates and proposals. So we have Judge Bailhash with us to present updates. So welcome, Judge. How are you?
Good evening. I'm doing well.
I have a presentation to present for you. Is that correct?
I don't think so.
No, just the memo. Okay.
Just the memo.
Great. All right.
So this session today is a combination of a few things. It's an update on COVID-19. I think the other appointed members are going to appoint to you next week, but I'm not available. I'm going to be out of town. So we're doing the COVID-19 updates today. We want to follow up with the municipal code changes that I brought up to the council. I think it was back in December. We were going to try to reconvene in the spring, but then COVID-19 happened, and so we put that on hold. Tammy is present today, Sutton, who is our court administrator or court supervisor, in case there's some questions that don't fall in my area of expertise. And then I wanted to just follow up on some other things from our last meeting in December, and then other things that I was working on up until COVID-19, and just going to give you some updates because our goal was to try to have somewhat regular communication with council as far as how things are going. And the last time I saw you, it was just to focus on COVID-19. So do you want me to expand on things? I don't have I can expand more on the additional updates and information. The COVID-19 in my memo was pretty straightforward as the municipal code changes and follow-ups. Do the council members have preference on how we go forward on the COVID-19 updates, I guess, to start with?
Yeah, that'll be good. Do you want to start with those? That makes sense.
Okay. So we reopened, we did virtual court in May using Ring Central. And then I think we had our first in-person court at the end of May. I think it was either May 12th or May 9th, or no, it was May 19th. It was court trials. And so that was really limited, controlled people coming into the building because they're coming in at half-hour time slots. And now we've resumed court, really opening on June 1st. We're still offering people the ability to appear by Ring Central. We've been designating every day that we have court, people can appear at 11:30, and it hasn't been very smooth. It's coming up on the lunch hour, trying to prepare for the afternoon. As the city attorney, a lot of times is doing code administrative hearings over the lunch hour. And so Tammy had the wonderful suggestion of moving it to just one day a month, which I think was a really good suggestion. And then Christy Osmus, the city attorney, suggested that we do it on our trial days, which I think makes sense. So we're going to start giving people the opportunity to appear at 8 in the morning. I think it's from 8 to 9, and then we'll start our court trials. And so that should help things run a little bit smoother docket-wise and give people who who are at risk in the population the ability to appear remotely, which I think is important. The Adams County Detention Center is not accepting any municipal warrants from any of the municipalities in Adams County. And at the beginning of the COVID, I had, in the interest of public safety, public health, and officer safety, I told officers they didn't need to arrest on warrants until we had an idea of really what COVID-19 looked like. And now that we have a better idea of how to social distance, face masking, hand washing, officers are going to start, contacting people who have warrants. But since the Adams County Jail won't take people that have warrants, we're going to make sure that everybody has a personal recognizance bond. We have people coming back into court, and the officers are going to be able to process personal recognizance bonds at the police department after hours. So if someone's arrested during business hours, the court can process them, or police records, and police records is there until, is it 10 or 11, Tammy?
I believe it's 11.
So anyone that's arrested after 11 or before 7 a.m., the officers are going to start processing the PR bonds. And so I worked with Commander Waltz and Osgood on that. And then community service, we've been trying to be flexible. Our Northglenn Juvenile Community Service Program, which Tammy is really in charge of running, is great because it's really hard for juveniles to be able to find places to do community service. And so a program that was created long before I got to the court is where juveniles report to the Justice Center on a Saturday or Sunday morning, do 8 hours of community service under the supervision of the folks that Tammy hires and manages to do community service. So we put a hold on that program, and it's resumed. And then, which is good because it's hard for the juveniles to find places. And then I've been a little bit more flexible on community service and trying to be creative. For example, the blood donations are down. So if people are willing to donate blood, they'll get credit for community service. Volunteers of America is still doing Meals on Wheels delivery, and they've asked people to create greeting cards for their elderly at-risk population that can't get out into the public. And so I'm giving credit for people that create greeting cards and sent them into Meals on Wheels. A lot of people still need cloth masks. So if you make masks and donate it, and then kind of going back to the roots of community service, helping your neighbor do yard work, weeding for your neighbor, or mowing their lawn. I'm accepting that to try to give a little bit of flexibility so that people can satisfy their core obligations, give back to the community, and find a safe way to do that during COVID-19. So those were the big three things that I wanted to touch on. The plexiglass shield that you all had recommended got installed in my bench so I can take my face mask down when I'm talking to people. We have dividers of plexiglass between the clerks. We're asking people to wear masks when they come into court. We're encouraging people hand wash. We have hand sanitizer at all the stations. We're doing a good job of social distancing. So I feel like having the court reopen has been going pretty well. So it's kind of the COVID-19 update.
Do we have questions from council about this portion? So I have Councilmember Goff and then Councilmember Brown. So Councilmember Goff, you're first.
Thank you. This is just a little follow-up on the collecting masks as the community service. Who is it that's needing the masks? And then I was wondering, since Northglenn has ordered a bunch of masks, I'm just kind of curious as to who it is that's needing these.
So National Jewish is still needs face masks, and Volunteers of America.
Oh, okay, so it's not limited to just Northglenn.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That was it.
Councilmember Brown.
Judge, I was just wondering, do we offer masks when they're there and they don't have one?
Yes, we have disposable masks.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that there was an option for them.
Yes.
Okay. That was my only question. I think everything else sounds great.
Excellent.
Any other questions about this from council? Nope. Okay, so we can move into your proposals.
Okay. So to refresh, so the sealing convictions is a new piece of legislation that was passed last year. And the statute just states that the municipality can charge for convictions as provided by law. My original recommendation, I think, was $100. And then after sitting down with a further discussion with City Manager Guy, with Jason Loveland, and with Tammy and I came up with a recommendation of $85. And so the statutory filing fee is $65. That's what we charge for somebody who's sealing a deferred judgment sentence that was successfully completed. And then $20 is tort costs, which is currently mandated by code. That covers the cost of having security there, court staff there, because if a person files a motion to seal a conviction, it requires a hearing. So it was really more of a cost recovery model. And then looking at the data that Tammy gathered, a lot of courts are still working on figuring out what their sealing conviction fee should be. And so I felt that $85 was an appropriate recommendation, but of course I would defer to counsel for what counsel thinks is the appropriate amount. The deferred judgment fee, the fee set by code is currently $30. I'm still requesting that it be increased to $100, and that's at the recommendation of Tammy, because she's the one that really knows what the cost is, the amount of work it costs, it creates for the clerks, the amount of administrative processing, and we think that it's consistent with the surrounding jurisdictions. And then the court supervision fee. So I'm still asking that the council create a supervision fee. My recommendation is for a flat fee of $100 for supervised probation, and then $50 for unsupervised probation. As I wrote in my memo, it's significantly less than what the jurisdictions that do charge for probation charge. And at the state level, probation costs $50 a month. The purpose of the fee is, I guess, it's based on cost recovery. When we have supervised probation, it's a probation officer meeting with a person, supervising them, meeting with them usually on a monthly basis. The unsupervised probation, the $50 fee is for court administration and staff. When I have put someone on unsupervised probation, we're having people come back into court and check in sometimes. We're doing administrative reviews to make sure that people have completed their court obligations. And then at the end of the period of supervision, we're making sure they're compliant before we close the case and move on. And so those are the three changes that we wanted, or that I wanted to address for the court.
Councilmember Goff.
Oops, thank you. I just, because a lot of this is new to me. I see on the chart that some of these fees that other cities are charging are by month, and some are a flat fee. How often does it need to go beyond a month? And then I'm just kind of wondering why you chose to do it the way you did.
So the average length of probation in Northglenn is 12 months. The city prosecutor usually asks for no further law violations for 12 months, and to make sure that a person stays out of trouble for 12 months. And so the court is reviewing the case for about 12 months. Usually we ask that their court obligations be satisfied within 3 months. So at that 3-month mark, a person comes in. If they haven't satisfied their court obligations, they come in at 3 months and ask for an extension. I always grant an extension. The idea is to get people to satisfy their court obligations and hopefully learn from something, learn from it and move on. So I'd say we're seeing a person at 3 months. If a person's non-compliant, then we're probably seeing them at 60 to 90 day intervals, but the average length of probation is 12 months.
Okay, so in that light, most of the fees seem pretty minimal compared to other municipalities.
Correct.
Thank you.
And then, and I would always take into consideration indigency. If a person couldn't afford to pay for probation as long as they fill out an affidavit about their financial situation and it was shown that they couldn't afford the fee, then I would waive it.
Mhm. Thank you.
Councilmember Downing.
Thank you. Thank you, Judge. I really like your proposal, but I'm just kind of curious, and maybe this question is for the city manager. Heather, since the judge suggested $100 for the first option, and then you recommended between 65 and 85 with Jason, I'm wondering why you did that.
So it just kind of like talking out what the fees were. The $100 was kind of a round, easy number. And so what we were thinking was the $60 for the ceiling, $20 for court costs. So that put us at 85, and it just kind of made sense to round up to 100. We wanted to, city manager Geyer told me that her philosophy is actual cost recovery. Tammy and I talking about it thought that bringing it down from 100 to 85 made sense.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I agree with your proposal. I think you put a lot of thought into it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the judge? Oh, Becky's humming. I also think your proposal looks great. So if there's not any other questions.
Can I just make a comment, Mayor? I'm so
yeah.
sorry.
That's okay.
I turned my video off because someone walked in and I'm like, I agree with the proposal 100%. I'm glad that we're taking these actions. And I appreciate all the work that you put into them, Judge. I would just say, let's make sure that we don't make any changes to the fireworks fines this year, and that we hold people accountable for those citations. I would prefer that those not be paid through community service, because most people who get caught for fireworks have done it before. I don't know if that's something you would even consider as giving community service for that, but I would prefer not to.
Councilmember Geyer, or Councilmember, City Manager Geyer, did you have something to add?
I was going to clarify for Councilmember Brown's benefit that when council adopted the fireworks ordinance, it included a provision for a mandatory minimum fine. So that does not allow discretion for community service. And so it's a mandatory minimum $1,000 fine based on the first offense, and then increases on later offenses.
Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me of that. I really do appreciate it.
Yes.
So, and I interpret the way that the code was passed, that as City Manager Geyer said, it's a mandatory minimum fine. And I interpret it as it doesn't give me any discretion to suspend a portion of it for indigency or to waive a portion of the fine in lieu of community service in lieu of the fine. And so if a person is unable to pay the fine, at some point it will go to collections. And then eventually we'll close the case in municipal court, and collections will try to get the money from the people. But that's how I've interpreted the code.
So if you don't appear, or you appear and you're sentenced, so you have $1,000 fine. I don't know the courts. I am totally naive to the process, Judge, but there's no warrant process when they don't pay or anything like that. It just goes to collections.
Correct. So it's now illegal in the state of Colorado to arrest somebody for failing to pay a fine.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Judge, for being here. We appreciate it. Sounds like your proposal is good to go.
So I think my understanding is, and City Manager Geyer, is for these, since it will have to be a code modification, you'll have to go through 3 more meetings, Heather?
2 more.
2 more.
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and get first readings scheduled. We can probably do that August 10th. and then do second reading public hearing on August 24th for the fee changes.
Great. Thank you. Okay, our next item is the 2020 council appointee evaluation process. So City Manager Geyer.
Did you want to go through any of the other updates?
Oh, I thought you were done. I apologize. You have more.
Oh no, it's okay. I don't. If you guys have, if there's any fault, if nobody has questions, it's fine. I'll weigh in on the council appointee as well. I'll hang out for the meeting.
Okay.
But I just had follow-up information for council.
Oh, certainly. Go ahead.
So everyone at the meeting in December, I let everybody know that our credit card fee is $9.95. And so Tammy did a lot, to kind of fill council in. It looks like I may have forgotten to attach Tammy's memo, but Tammy is here. Oh no! So yeah, it's you can see the credit card fees on the spreadsheet, and then I would direct any questions council has about our flat fee to Tammy. She has the institutional knowledge, the history, and has a lot of follow up on it as well.
Councilmember Brown.
I'm wondering why we're not just charging, and I know that information's in there, but I can't keep them both up at the same time anymore. But is there a reason we're not just charging a 2.5% flat fee, like when I go to my chiropractor or my hairdresser and my nail guy charges an extra 2.5% flat on my whatever I'm buying, my service?
So I'll tackle that one. What I was told from finance was that the credit card fees are all over the board. And it just depends on what type of credit card that people choose to use. So if they use a credit card that, for example, has mileage, well, then the fees go up for that.
Oh.
So there was really no way to come up with the percentage. Full court charges the 5.95%, which is actually expensive with some of our defendants that are paying fines. We, at 5.95%, we've taken payments for $800. A 5.95% would be $47.60, and they're paying $9.95. So I think it's a good value for what people are getting. A standard $4.170 fine times the 5.95% is $10.12. So it still is a little bit less than that, but it was just averaged out over time. And when this was created, which was back in 2010 and 2011, the court was actually asked to start researching taking online credit card payments. So that research was done in request to the public requesting that service be provided. And so that was when that plan was put into motion. So it's been that way since 2010, 2011. And for the service that we get, which is that they take all the chargebacks, they provide us the website for free. They have an 800 number that's free. I think it's a pretty good value.
I agree with you. I trust you 100%. I just wanted to know, you know, why. Yeah. Thank you. I won't use my mileage card anymore.
Well, the retailer has to pay that. So I'd say use it if they're willing to take it.
You betcha. Thanks, Tammy.
You're welcome.
All right, so then just kind of additional information. I think it was Council Member Downing that had the idea about installing the payment drop box at the Justice Center when we met in December. So Tammy got that ordered and installed, and people are using it. And I'm really glad that we did. I can't remember if this kind of anecdotal story was before or after the last meeting, but there's a gentleman sliding money orders under the door, and the money order got lost twice. Once we found it, once we didn't. And so having the payment Dropbox has been peace of mind. It gets used. I don't know if it gets used a lot, but I think it was money well spent, and I'm glad that we have it. Our probation officer has resigned, and Tammy and I decided that we were going to hold off on filling that position. First, due to budget restraints caused by COVID-19. Second, I'd like to revisit how we can really use probation and expand the population of our probation department. Originally, the probation officer was hired to deal with our juvenile population. And I've really found a really huge need with our homeless population here in Northglenn. And so what I was interested in finding a person that could be like a case manager or a homeless navigator. I found out from City Manager Geyer today earlier that with the CARES money, the city just hired a community outreach resource navigator. So it's kind of that type of position that I think would be beneficial. We sent out a survey from our probation client. It was just on SurveyMonkey. I got one response back, which isn't terribly surprising since most of our probationers were juveniles. And, you know, it's unclear to me what happens to mail for a juvenile that goes to the parent's house. We don't always have great response back from the mailing, but, you know, he has a good idea of what the court's need have been in the past. I've seen really a downtick in kind of our juveniles, at lower level juveniles.
What's going on
lately? So we'll see when we'll revisit that, at the beginning of next year when the budget talk starts coming again, and we'll kind of see what the needs develop. I was telling City Manager Geyer today, if in-person school doesn't resume, it's very well that our juvenile population could increase. So we kind of just have to see what the community's needs are going to be. And then in January, I had reached out to Tri-County Health. I was really excited about working on this juvenile program because it was really kind of a hole I had seen in Northglenn, and I was looking for how we could better serve our juveniles. I had a few meetings with Tri-County Health. I submitted the brief that was prepared by Kathy Stats. I had just at the beginning stages of talking to City Manager Geyer about what kind of Northglenn programs and people could be involved in a program like this. And then COVID-19 happened. And so I have postponed that all when things kind of settle down, where people are doing more in-person meetings, I'll reach out back to Kathy Stats. But I just wanted to let you guys know it was something I was working on, but I think it's the appropriate time to kind of put it on hold. Really, we're spending a lot of our energy and time at court right now is just making sure that people are getting in and out of court safely. We're trying to figure out how to have court trials, jury trials, things like that. And then I've become much more involved in the North Metro Community Diversion Board. It's been really good. I realized that as a municipal judge, I didn't really understand a lot about the diversion program. I knew what it was conceptually, but I didn't know a lot about the service provider or the ins and outs of the IGA. And like I think I wrote in my memo, the board was created in the early 90s. And so it was time to kind of update it, make sure we have updated membership. And so myself and the other executive officers have been meeting on that quite frequently. And then we meet every other month. And then my work, I was able to do some work at STEM Lab School in January, which was great. It was a really nice, a wonderful experience. The 8th graders came in and got to observe court. I got to go to the school and do a presentation and then do follow up with them on their presentations. So that's been my community involvement. So that's kind of what's been going on in the last, I guess, 7 months since I saw you guys. Questions?
Goff and then Councilmember Mullica.
Thank you. It's not a question. I just want to say this is wonderful. I'm glad that we did go over all of that. The program that you're hopefully eventually will get to work out with the Tri-County Health sounds fabulous. And I think it's something that we really needed. So I look forward to seeing how that comes into life when we all get to come out of our little shells. So yes. Thank you very much. This looks, it was a great presentation. I know you did a lot of hard work, and I'm just going to echo Councilmember Brown that this is great. Thank you.
Councilmember Mullica?
Yeah, my comments are very similar. First of all, it's great to see your face because I feel like I never get to see you. So thank you for coming before us again and giving us an update. I think it's very helpful. And, you know, all of the hard work that you've been doing to keep our courts running for during this COVID-19 time, it's a lot. So thank you to you and Tammy. I know, Tammy, you've been doing a lot of this hard work too, so thank you guys. I am also excited to hear about, you know, the project that you're working on with Tri-County. And one question that I did have about that is, with that program, are you working with Adams 12 at all to implement anything, or are you working with Adams 12 in any other particular way? Just curious for juveniles.
I am not. I have a really good relationship with Lori Bailey, who's the Adams 12, I think, what's her title? I can't remember. She's like a district level administrator who does intervention. I think she's an intervention specialist, maybe. She's the person that supports the deans when they're dealing with disciplinary issues. She's on the diversion board. She's the president of the board. And so, you know, I hadn't thought about reaching out to Adams 12. I think that's a good idea, and it's somebody that I could reach out to follow up on when we start resuming working on this.
Okay, awesome, great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the judge? No? Okay. Do you have more information for us? I don't want to jump in there again.
Okay. I did want to, I guess I'll just tell you, especially because Tammy's here. And I think I said this when I met with you guys at my last COVID-19. I feel so lucky to work in the city of Northglenn, especially with the Northglenn Municipal Court. The team that Tammy runs over there is incredible. She is an excellent supervisor. She identifies problems and finds solutions. She cares about input from her team over there, and really going through COVID-19, which was such a challenge. I just wanted you guys to know how great she is. And I think our court runs really well.
Thank you, Judge.
You're welcome, Tammy.
That's awesome. Thank you. Well, it was good to see both of you. Okay, so now we're going to move into the second item, the 2020 Council Appointee Evaluation Process. So City Manager Geyer.
Thank you, Mayor Leidy. So this evening we have two guests with us, Joe Mattoon, who several of you have met previously back in, I believe it was late 2018 and then on into early 2019. Joe is our third-party facilitator who helped council update the council appointee evaluation system. Then we also have June Ramos, who is the third-party facilitator that I'm recommending to council that you use to get the process going. If you had a chance to look at the memo, the timing of this whole process was supposed to start mid to late March, and COVID-19 happened. It seems like a common theme as we're bringing items back to you. We keep referencing because of COVID, it was put on hold. So what Joe's going to do tonight is walk you through where we're at to date. Part of what I asked her to do in re-engaging Joe is to do a check-in with council appointees and to see what's working, what maybe didn't work as well with last year's process, and make adjustments to get feedback from all of you on the process and buy-in to make sure everyone's on board before we move forward. And then to have June talk about herself, what she can provide in this process. And then ultimately the consensus I'm looking for tonight is to get buy-in to move forward with my evaluation, the city clerk's evaluation. And then, as you know, part of what we shifted when council updated the process in early 2019 is that the city attorney and the judges' evals happen in the fall. And so we would be using June, based on my recommendation, to engage those two council appointees and council in a couple months after we wrap up the first two council appointees, which is myself and city clerk. And with that, I'll turn it over to Joe.
Great. Nice to see you all again. And some of you knew me. I was realizing I knew about half of you when we went through the process for the first time. So if you don't mind, I'll just give a 1-minute bio because it gives context to my background in this. I did 20 years of in-house human resources in 3 cities. I was the executive HR person for Arvada, Golden, and Loveland. And then I've had my own consulting business for the last 9 years. And I've worked with some councils in this kind of realm. And I'm really happy that you've hired June Ramos because she's the best at this. And so really also glad that she's part of this conversation because sometimes I think things get lost in translation between the design pieces and then the actual facilitation. So really happy to have her, and we'll ask her if she has additional thoughts if you have questions on this. My goal tonight was not to waste your time and do a whole review of what we did in the first place, but certainly if there is a need for any kind of reminders of what the process was. Madam Mayor, if I'm looking at, we could do starting at page 17 for the handouts.
Okay. I'll share my screen. I have the presentation pulled up. Do you want that or no?
Yeah, if you have the presentation, yes, great.
That's perfect.
Beautiful. All right. And we can go to second page here. Actually, no, I'm looking for the new ones. That was last year's presentation. It starts on page 17, I believe.
Okay, sorry, I'll keep scrolling.
No, I made us confusing, so I will own responsibility for that.
Oh, no worries. Let's see.
Great. Those materials are available if we need to do any kind of reference.
I can shrink this.
Yeah. Awesome.
Great.
Okay. Great.
Here we are.
Beautiful. So if you can go to the second one here, the only 2 slides that are repeats from last year was I just wanted to put in context, especially for those of you that weren't here. Back in the end of 2018, in November and December, did some check-ins with council before we ever started into a redesign process to say, what did you want? You know, the worst thing to do is create a system and then have you say, well, that's not what we wanted. So from the full council that we talked to at the end of 2018, these were kind of the big picture goals that you were looking for. And so you can see great goals, things that are really about facilitating staff growth and development, feedback opportunities, adding some goal focus. You can read, I'm not going to read all of these too, especially conversational and ongoing. So many of you probably have either received or given evaluations in your own career and know that the annual process is not always the strongest. So we tried to build a system that had sort of an ongoing feedback system into it. And if we could move to the next slide. This was the other thing. And again, this is a year old, so the dates in here no longer make sense. One of the other things that was a big point in the change that we did was it is a little unusual for contract employees to receive a full-blown evaluation. And your attorney and your municipal judge are contract employees. So what we tried to do was to delineate the differences between your 2 employees, your manager and your clerk, and your 2 contracted, and to put a little more of a robust process in place for the employees. And you can see that the idea, at least initially, dates, of course, are not the same this year, but a more traditional system, having an evaluation tool, one that focuses on goals and competencies, getting feedback from stakeholders, and then having the 1-year formal review, but 2 check-ins in the year that could be more informal to add to that conversational piece. Now, for the attorney and the judge, what we recommended and council approved the idea of was really more of a check-in, not designed to provide any kind of written performance evaluation to the two contractors. So simply having a meeting with them, they would provide you information similar to what the judge actually just presented, but there's a questionnaire that would give them an opportunity to share some of their challenges and their successes, some feedback from stakeholders, and then simply letting you use those materials to have an informal conversation and to discuss any needed changes to contracts. So those are the really big picture reminders of what we did on that. If we could go to the next slide. As noted by City Manager Geyer here, she did ask, and I wanted to make sure that we got some feedback from the people who were the recipients of your evaluations and feedback last year. So reached out to all four, and then also reached out to the prior facilitator who worked with you on this, just to get a sense of what worked well, what didn't work well, any suggestions they had. And then, of course, tonight's meeting is for me to gather the same kind of information from you. So just to give you kind of a quick overview of what they thought worked well. They did like the questionnaire used by the contract employees and the evaluation form. Oops, can we go back to 20? Sorry.
What worked well?
Yes, there we go. And the fact that it was a third-party facilitator. And it's always, having been a city staff person responsible for this, I'm so proud of you for using somebody external. It just is always kind of an interesting and painful process for staff. So bringing in that outside help. Now, if we could go to the next slide, please. Now, some of the things that didn't seem to work well. It did sound like there was perhaps some confusion on agenda. First year of a process doesn't surprise me. Maybe things were a little rushed on that. That maybe you didn't get as much oversight and leadership from your facilitator as you wanted in the prior year. There was some concern that only some of the city council members provided feedback, and that the way that the actual discussions were held was also just kind of an uncomfortable situation with the person down below and council up on dais versus some kind of more conversational sitting around a table, or I guess we're all learning things now as we sit here in these types of virtual situations. Next slide, please. Also, because this first year was kind of a rushed year, we did not recommend or plan on doing stakeholder feedback the first year, just due to timelines. But that'll be something that if you do continue to use the stakeholder process, would recommend definitely bringing in this year on that. And some feedback that perhaps there were some surprises during the evaluation. You know, certainly one of the things I've always taught over the years with doing performance evaluations is that the employee should not be hearing it for the first time in the evaluation. And there was some perception that that had occurred. And then also the council's feedback was provided anonymously, and that may not be in alignment with your values. So we can talk about ways to make that a little bit more transparent on that, if that is a direction you would like to go. All right, next slide, please. Some recommendations they had would be to further simplify the process for the contractors, having all council members speak during the discussion sessions, look at expanding the stakeholders, especially for the municipal judge position, and then just getting a little bit better both notification and support from your facilitator. But now that I know you have Ms. Ramos, I'm not concerned for you on that last one. So next slide, please. Again, there's increasing that role, and actually maybe even having, I think one of the things that wasn't in our original plan was to have the facilitator really helping kind of negotiate those interactions. And so maybe recommendations to up that a little bit. Also recommendations for council members to sit in on municipal court. I know from all the cities I've worked with, getting feedback on the judge is truly one of the most challenging positions for any city council because council doesn't have that kind of either week to week or month to month experience with that position. Doing the feedback in a timelier basis rather than saving things for evaluation. And then while this was the original plan, something must have gotten lost in translation. The original tool that I mocked up for you was really meant to be a mock-up. So a very specific recommendation is that what you work with as council members be really simplified for you, just to do it through a Survey Monkey so you don't have to mess with the tool that was put together. And I think that'll be an easy change from that end. All right, next slide, please. All right, and before I jump into my questions for you, maybe I can do a quick check-in here and see if there's anything that you have questions on with everything that I just ran through at the speed of lightning, because that's my way.
So something I can think about is, so it seems like we already provided feedback to these questions because you just told us what we said before. Is that correct?
No, that was the feedback from, sorry, let me clarify better. That was the feedback from the attorney, the manager, the clerk, the judge, and the facilitator, not from council. But what I had originally talked about feedback was way back at the design, at the very beginning, before we ever redesigned your system. So 2018 was those big picture issues.
Okay. Well, I guess for me, I was personally aligning with what you just presented. So I was like, oh yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. I thought you already asked me that. So yeah, if there's more to share, you know, we'll definitely open it up. We do have 3 council members tonight that weren't a part of that process. So Councilmember Brown.
I'm humming again. I just wanted to say, welcome back, Joe. I missed you.
Thank you, Councilor.
I actually agree with our employees regarding the facilitator. It was a very, it felt broken process. You know, we didn't really know what our expectations were, even though I sat on the committee, you know, it just was very fractured and I didn't enjoy it last time, you know. So hopefully June will be able to help us get it a little bit more aligned so that it's fair and we know where we're going with it. I still question, these are mine, by the way, Meredith, I'm sorry. I still question the need to give Corey an evaluation. He is a contracted laborer. We pay him by the hour. We don't know anything about the law, seriously. And the only thing I could think to say was that he's a wonderful person and he always, you know, responds to me timely. So I'm wondering if this is not the proper time to maybe revisit the subject of not evaluating Corey, because I don't think the evaluation that we worked on was all that beneficial, because we struggled with, he's not really an employee. He doesn't fall into the bucket of employees. So maybe it's just a suggestion that maybe we want to have that conversation at some point. Other than that, I think that the information that you got from our team, as far as what worked and what didn't work, I agreed with it 100%. I felt it when we gave out the evaluations. So, and welcome back, and I appreciate everything you've done for us. It was great to work with you.
Great, well, thank you. I do want to make a clarification. Hopefully you did not do an evaluation on Corey or the judge. It's not designed to be an evaluation. It's not designed for council to write anything up or provide any ratings. It was simply designed to be a structured conversation between council and those 2 positions. Now, to Councilor Brown's point, though, most municipalities don't even do that. They typically just, if it's truly a contracted position, as is Mr. Hoffman, it is unusual to even do as much as you do. So.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councilmember Mullica.
So yeah, I'd like to echo what some of the things that Becky said, especially about last year's process, because it really did seem chaotic most of the time. And I think it was really frustrating, I think, for everybody. It wasn't a very enjoyable process. And honestly, I feel like it really kind of took away from Heather and Joanna's evaluation. So I felt like I'm really looking forward to a better process this year. And I also agree that we should work in there about how are we giving consistent feedback throughout the time period. And I know that we don't really have a formal process of doing that, but I feel like that's really important. And then I think one good thing, if I remember correctly, I think I like the new tool we use though. Because I felt like the first one was a little bit like I remember circling numbers and I thought that was kind of arbitrary. And so I felt like our tool got improved. So that was a plus from last year, right? So I was just trying to be positive. I'm definitely looking forward to maybe a little bit more structure and an opportunity to have like a conversation. So maybe instead of we're probably going to be doing the evaluation virtually, I guess, if it's going to be happening soon. But if we are in person, it'd be great to not be at the dais when we're doing that. Perhaps maybe in a study session kind of format, or we could do like the conference room or something, but something that is more conversational, because that did feel funny.
Okay, if unless anyone has questions about the way the process was, because you guys are already going where I wanted to go anyways, which is your specific feedback on what works and not works. So I just want to see if there's any other questions about process before I get your additional thoughts on those topics. Nope. Okay, great. Madam Mayor, if you could put the things back up to, let's see, it would be page 25. All right, so we can do this in any way. Maybe if you even want to take moments, sometimes I know some people like on a thinking process to write down a couple things before they actually answer the question. But what I'm looking for here, kind of those top aspects that were least effective. Oops, did we get actually, I think I may be the slide before. I think we start with what is working. There we go. What worked best? And you can provide it to me in any way. This is your meeting, so we don't have to be as regimented as every person answers 3. But what I'm looking for is...
I think, Joe, that's where I don't know. I mean, we can have each council member speak, but for me, I'm echoing what our employees stated. So the feedback that you just shared, I agree with all of it. And that's what I heard Councilmember Brown and Mullica say. So I'm not quite sure if you needed to recapture those things or...
No, I'm good with those things. Maybe if there's additional things beyond those that people liked. I never get much with the positive, just the nature of the beast. I'm guessing I'll have more when it comes to the negative. All right, let's move then to the what's not working. You don't have to have the slide up, it's pretty obvious. What from your perspectives did not work besides the things we've already talked about?
Councilmember Brown.
Don't be so enthusiastic. I missed, or we didn't really do it in the other process either, where council got together ahead of time before a facilitator to talk about things, you know? Because I may think that Joanna's the moon and the stars, right? And somebody else may have had a different experience. I know that's where we do our comments, but I think it would be really good if we acted like a team and maybe had a conversation before going forward with the evaluation. You know what I mean? So that Julie knows what Becky's thinking and why I thought that way. Right. You know, I think it would lead to a more cohesive evaluation rather than having all of us up there having different views or even the same view I feel like we're disjointed as a council in that process. I think that's all on us before the evaluation is given.
Yeah, and that was actually how we had designed it originally. Was the idea was each of you would individually kind of complete comments, do your first take at scoring, and then it was the facilitator's job to put all those comments together, but then facilitate you having a conversation where you can have that discussion and saying, here's why I said this, here's what I said that, and then coming to a mutual agreement on a kind of a group scoring for each of the competencies. So that was the original design. That sounds like
I thought so.
Translation again last year. So.
I think it was the ineffectiveness, I'm sorry, of our facilitator in bringing us all together, because they're pointless unless we're all, everybody can have a negative, everybody can have a positive. But if we're not informed and we're not talking through why we feel that way,
exactly.
we're going to look disjointed.
Yes, and best practice is calibrating that way together, because anytime council evaluations, in my opinion, are one of the most difficult ones, because in your case, you have 9 people that have to speak as a single voice. So I think that's important. Councilor Goff, did you have? Oh, excuse me, Mayor. I think it's not my job.
No, it's totally fine. Totally fine.
Thank you. I wasn't involved in this the last time, so I can't really say what did or didn't work. But I do want to, I don't know, this might be the point to bring it up, but I think not having comments be anonymous is the way I would go. And the reason I'm saying that is that as a new person, there are things that I might appreciate from Heather that somebody who's been doing this a long time might think, oh, not that again, or something like that. I mean, I don't know. I'm just kind of making an example there. So I think it will depend on like how long you've been doing this or who you are, what kind of things that you appreciate or value. So I just would put that in here, even though it's, I can't compare it to what you did last time.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And, actually another one of my clients, all the comments have initials next to them, so that even though it's a group rating, the comments are identifiable to the employees, so they do know who said what. And from your values, that makes sense to me to move to that direction. Other things that were not.
Councilmember Malika?
I'll agree with that as well. I think comments should be identifiable. I think it would make for a stronger process. So, and actually, I do have one quick question about, I guess it would be the process. We did have Corey sit in, I think, for Heather's evaluation, right? I think I remember him sitting in for that. Are we going to continue that again this year?
That would be unusual to have one person sitting in on another person's evaluation. So,
well, we did it because I don't remember why he was there last year. Was he not there? Am I remembering this?
I don't remember. I'm having a hard time remembering.
I know, me too. But I felt like Corey was there. I don't know why. Go ahead, Beck.
We can clarify in the materials your preference, one direction or the other. So.
I don't think Corey was there with the new process, Julie, last year. I think the last time Corey attended a city manager's evaluation was with Jim Hayes. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the last time he was in on it. We didn't have him this last time.
Okay. All right. Maybe that's what I'm remembering then. Thanks.
Joanna, do you have an answer? Yeah.
Not for Heather's evaluation, because obviously I wasn't in there, but Corey did sit in on my evaluation, both with the facilitator and then with the conversation with council down in chambers. So I just wanted to throw that out there because I questioned his attendance as well. So I'd be curious to hear from Joe on that.
It's not common practice. Usually the evaluation is council, the employee, and then sometimes the facilitator, depending on the model you use. It's very unusual to have another appointee or employee in the room.
Julie?
Well, and I feel like if I'm remembering correctly, I thought the reason why he was in there was because of some issues that we had with Jim, but I don't remember. So that's why I was like, I remember him being there because we were concerned about, I don't know, something, I forget, like just having another presence, I guess, in the evaluation. And so I'm actually okay if he's not in the evaluation moving forward, if the rest of council is okay with that. I just remember that being a little quirky last year. And I'm okay with him not being present if that's okay with him.
I think that makes sense based on Joe's recommendation as well. Councilmember Peterson and then Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. Is this evaluation process with the city manager, is this a public meeting?
No.
Yeah, the way it was designed was to be done in executive session.
Okay. And so, and again, I wasn't here either for this, and the 9 of council are sitting in at the same time kind of thing and going over whatever we go over.
Correct. Back to Councilor Mullica's comment, what I have seen some cities, because it's a executive session, sometimes the attorney has to come in and do whatever legalese at the beginning of the meeting, but then they're usually excused for the actual conversation between the appointee and the council.
Yeah, I would think just as and just real quick to wrap this up, Heather, do you hire Corey as city manager?
We did.
I do not.
The city does.
Yeah, Corey is a council appointee because you hire Corey.
Okay. I would be okay. I don't think he needs to be there, and just part of that is just if it's not a public meeting and it's just council, I think I kind of respect a privacy issue for our employees, and good, bad, or indifferent. It's it's their evaluation. It's I respect the, dare I say, intimacy, but the privacy of that, for our staff. So I don't think he needs to be there.
Councilmember Brown.
Am I singing? Can you hear me? Okay. Julie, you totally reminded me of why he was in on Joanna's evaluation. And that was because of the evaluation the year before was when everything started with Mr. Hayes. So we had Corey in there to make sure we stayed on task. That's what that was about.
Awesome.
I don't care. I don't think Corey should be in there. I think that was an exception that was made because of an issue that we had from the year before. We wanted to make sure that we stayed on track when we spoke about it. And it was not an issue with Joanna. It was not an issue of performance. It had to do with her evaluation, but I want to be perfectly clear that it had nothing to do with her performance. It had nothing to do with anything that Joanna had done. It was all stemming from the incident from our previous city manager.
All right, other things that didn't work. We've also kind of molded into improvements. So anything else that you would like to see changed up or improved upon? You should know that Ms. Ramos has a PhD in cat herding. So she is well skilled to keep you on track so you don't need Mr. Hoffman in there.
Just like you.
Perfect for us.
June is going to kill me at the end of this meeting.
Additional pressure on me. Thank you.
You used to call me friend.
I think that we had talked about, and I'm sorry I didn't raise my hand.
Okay.
We had talked about an automatic process. So are we at the point where we are at an automatic process where we can use SurveyMonkey to put our comments in for this evaluation, things like that? We are on target for that.
Yeah, I think, Ms. Ramos and I can talk offline after this, but we can certainly work on transitioning to that because originally that was truly the plan for last year. But again, something got lost in translation with that.
Well, and I think we ran into that time crunch. We needed to start going.
Yeah. Actually, I'm sorry, you're referring to something I think different than I am. For council, easy to move over to SurveyMonkey for your comments. What we didn't do last year purposefully was stakeholder feedback.
Right.
Because that was the time crunch issue. And so that would be something that could be done this year, depending on what time frame you and Ms. Ramos figure out for this process.
When we say stakeholders, and I'm sorry I'm taking all your time, Joe, is there an appropriate number? Is there that we should be hitting? Should, like for Heather, should it just be the department leads, or should we trickle it down a little bit?
We talked about those last year and involved them in the choosing. Now, of course, the judge just came on right around the time that this all got kind of finalized. So I think the judge has some reasonable thoughts on getting additional feedback beyond the list that the prior situation was set up for. So that would be the one place where I would make a recommendation to you is connect with her and figure out how it might be done to get a broader feedback. And then the other piece that I don't know if happened or not was originally it was designed that there would be kind of ongoing feedback from Ms. Small's customer base, since you only see her in one part of her many roles. And so that also might be a model for doing some of the work with additional ones for the judge.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anything else on your wish list? All right, then I'm going to basically make sure all these notes get captured in the materials, and we'll work with Ms. Ramos. If you're game, I'd love to let her kind of speak up and add anything, because she does this work so well and has played my role many a time too.
Thanks, Joe.
Welcome.
Nice to meet everybody. I have a quick clarifying question. I did notice that Councilmember Goff and Peterson, you were not part of last year's process. Who's the other third person who was not? Oh, okay. Thank you. Just want to make sure.
And I don't believe Miss Wilford was part of last year either.
Yes, she was.
No, she was.
Yes, she was.
She was.
Got it.
Okay, that's helpful. Okay. Well, what Heather gave me as an objective to participate in this process was to be a part of listening to the feedback to frame a successful process moving forward. And Joe and I have long history together, and we have worked together, and she hired me when she was the HR manager and I was still a consultant. While she's had her own business for 9 years, I'm at least 3 times as long in terms of my own business as a management consultant, with a primary niche market in local government, municipal government, some county government as well. And so my background is one of understanding local government. Probably about 5 years ago, while I've done a lot of work in performance management, 5 years ago I was requested to work with Council Member Mark McGough and the City Attorney Chris Daly at City of Arvada. They were in the process of redesigning their performance management process. And while I've done a lot of employee performance management, that was probably the first time I started working with council. And so I just finished with them about 6 weeks ago. They hired me again to do another round. I have experience in this process with City of Arvada, Littleton, City of Louisville, City of Thornton. I think it's in my bio that Heather, you provided in the packet, Commerce City, and then an urban development, the ORA, the Arvada Urban Development Organization, and a fire district, all used a similar model. And it's very, very much in alignment with what the model that was created by Joe, and I think it's very successful. So I was taking a lot of good notes, and hopefully my notes align with Joe on what you want differently, because the structure of this is it's your meeting, it's your performance evaluation, but you need the guidance of a good facilitator to herd cats, apparently. And I just met you, so I don't know if your cats or I haven't given you an animal attribution quite yet, but it is to provide the necessary structure where you can have the right conversation and feel comfortable talking about the performance of your council appointee. The goal of this process, as I envision it, and it sounds like, Joe, you designed it the same way, is you end up with a very consensus-based document and agreement on what communication will occur with, in this case, your city manager and your city clerk. And that process is critical. So all the events that lead up to filling out the Survey Monkey, and I agree wholeheartedly, you do not want to do an anonymous process. It's not fair to you as council members to not know what each other is thinking. There are 9 of you, both Joanne and Heather have 9 bosses, and they you need to know what each other thinks. And so it's critical to have a transparent, open communication, and that from that process, then you need to have the right consensus-based conversation to say, what do we agree on? And then how do we handle the disagreement? So as you look at, if one of you thinks this is a strength that I think our city manager has, and somebody says, oh, no, I think that I need more of that. I need better communication. I need stronger communication. You might be getting it. I'm not getting it. So how do we frame the final document in a way that, as Joe said, you have to operate as a unified voice, that you are providing one performance review for your appointee. And that would be my role to help you accomplish that in that discussion. I made a couple other notes about, I did make a note about the attorney and the role. Only one other municipality had the attorney present during the, not the actual evaluation, but the attorney was present in the consensus discussion. As Joe mentioned, it was the job of the attorney to set the executive session, and then the attorney came back and then provided counsel, legal counsel, on the discussion on compensation, because this particular attorney knows the law and knows the framework of compensation and how that is impacted in what you're doing and how you're doing that. So there has been one instance where a city attorney participated in my consensus discussion with council, but not at the actual performance review. And I certainly hold that in alignment with what you talked about. I like Survey Monkey. I like the fact that it's simple and easy, where you can, if we frame it correctly with the right questions. The important part is not just using Survey Monkey to create on the Likert scale on a 1 to 5, but it's what narrative, the comments, the examples that demonstrate high level of policy and fiscal responsibility, financial acumen, whatever it is you're measuring your 2 people against, that those are the comments that provide the richness and the meat to the bones, as it were, so that you have the right conversation. So I'm speaking very generally. So my goal was to let you know that I have a lot of experience in this, and your job is to make sure that you feel comfortable and confident that I might be the right facilitator in terms of my style and whatnot. So I'd be glad to entertain any and all questions to make sure that you feel like you have enough information to make the right decision and say, yep, we want to work with June, and you won't hurt my feelings if you ask me tough questions at all.
Councilmember Brown.
I think the only comment I have, June, is based on our interaction with the previous facilitator, is we didn't really realize that his shortcomings until the day of the evaluations. You know what I mean? In this case, I trust Joe because I worked so hard with her. She just really makes you put your nose to the grindstone. No laughter, no nothing.
She's amazing.
You got it. But so I would have to say that I would have to trust you or anybody else. You know, you come with very high recommendations from Joe, who I trust implicitly. But unless I were to see your style, I know what I didn't like last time, but unless I was to see your style, I couldn't judge it any different.
Yeah. Well, there are two things. First of all, I heard your feedback very clearly that all of you felt fractured. You needed more of a clear direction. You felt chaotic. You wanted a sense of structure, and you wanted a better process of working together. So I take that very seriously, and I think I do that. I am also delighted to provide you all with references, and Mark Williams at the City of Arvada, any and all of the other mayors that I've worked with. If you want to talk directly with any of those, or if somebody wants to do that very quickly, I have been given promises that they would give me good evaluations, but they'll also, and I pay them to do that. So I want that money well spent. I've always gotten good feedback that the structure I provide is working, and so if that's helpful, I'm delighted to provide through Heather, your city manager, the names of the mayors and the city managers that I've worked with, and you can do some quick feedback before you make your final decision. But you're absolutely right. You get a little bit of a sense of me right now, how I communicate, but what happens when you as a group can't come to consensus, and what happens when somebody goes off on a tangent? How do I facilitate and bring that back and provide focus and make sure that we're having the right conversation in a timely fashion, because we don't want this to be a 3, 4, 5, 6 hour meeting. So, it's a time bound session. And that I'm not so structured that you don't feel like you're being listened to and heard. So I come with strong credentials and recommendations, and if that's helpful, I'm delighted to provide those. And Joe, if you want to say anything else about why we work well together, specifically, that might also be helpful for some of the council members.
So I think I want to add. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm so sorry, Meredith.
That's okay.
I did just have one more question. If it was all possible to have a mock go through on an evaluation, maybe not even a real evaluation, but just a mock, so we can understand how it should roll versus how it did roll last year. I think that would help us all be a little bit more comfortable when we only have 4 people that we do it on, it would make me, I'll only speak for myself, feel more comfortable if we just did a mock on your style at some point. I don't have a problem with you, June, not at all. I saw what happened last year, Joe, and I just want to be comfortable. That's it. So maybe a mock may be the wrong word, but
I'm not sure what you're asking for in terms of mock. So help me to understand specifically.
So we would have an evaluation. You would show us how you start, how you start the conversation. I can tell you right off the bat, the thing I didn't like last year was the focus on give the salary first, and then it leads into the conversation. And then if you have any negative feelings, the conversation is a little bit not as hard because they already know that they're making what they're going to get an increase on. Yeah, and that felt disjointed to me. So okay, June, I love you already. I mean, I'm all for it, but I just want to see it. You understand what I'm saying?
Well, I'm getting a better, clear understanding. So I'm delighted to do what you need, but let me just give you what I've done in the past and see if that's helpful. I agree. Do not start with salary discussion. Salary is a final conversation that says you have earned this compensation merit increase or whatever. And it's based on everything we've talked about previously. And I put together an agenda. So let's talk first about the consensus discussion. The consensus discussion is where we all meet together and I facilitate. I start with desired outcomes. I identify the ground rules for success. I identify the process by which we work, and it's pretty simple. You will have received all of the feedback from the SurveyMonkey in advance, and you will have had a chance to review all of the data, and you will know what each other has said about the person who's being evaluated, whether it's the city manager or the city clerk. And so this becomes a summary discussion, and my process that has worked pretty well in the past is pretty simple. Oh, is that an airplane landing in somebody's yard? I just heard it.
No, that was a car going up the street behind my house.
Okay. So it's really simple. I start with either a whiteboard or a flip chart, and I'll say, okay, let's start with your city manager. Let's do a summary and make sure we have clear consensus on what are your city manager's strengths. And so Council Member Peterson jumps in and he says, one of the things I think Heather does really well is X, Y, and Z. And then I look at the grid and I say, give me an example of that. And then I look at the group and I say, who else has feedback about Heather's communication and city manager council relationships? And so I'll mind the group to make sure that that comment that I'm writing on the flip chart, because then I transcribe all that information into your final document, I make sure we have consensus discussion. And then when the mayor says, well, this is an area where I really think she needs a little work, I'll say, let's put a placeholder on that when we get to areas of improvement. And then I'll capture that. And then I start creating, okay, here's the connection. Here's where the differences are. Here are the gaps. Here's where we have agreement. And so I work you all through first positives and strengths, things you want, for example, Heather, to do more of, right? Then we move on to developmental areas. What are some areas you want her to improve on? What are some things you want her to do more of or less of or start doing? And then and as I look at your process, what are the goals you want Heather to work on in the upcoming performance cycle? And we brainstorm those. And all of this is based on the feedback. You're not making this up as we go. It's all based on the feedback that you have provided in advance, right? So all we're doing is creating a summary, right? And then I do a consensus check and look for agreement and alignment. And then when we're ready to move on, then we'll jump into your city clerk, and then we work on Joanna. What are her strengths? What are the things you want her to keep doing? What are the areas of improvement, stop doing, or start doing some new things? What are her goals and objectives? And then we hold hands, sing Kumbaya, and adjourn.
Can I have one more? And then I'll leave her alone, Meredith.
Yeah.
Is the city staff's evaluation process this same way? And the reason I ask, Heather, is that, like on NURA, we're not like the planning board. We have, we use city employees. We use Jason's on there. He's our financial director. Debbie Tuttle's on there. Susan is there because they're integral to that part of that meeting, right? I'm wondering, even though they are your employees, would there ever be an opportunity for a council member to weigh in on that or to provide feedback, positive or negative?
No is a simple answer in terms of weighing in on a employee evaluation. That's why you have me. That's why you've appointed me to run and manage the city. Certainly, if you feel strongly about something, that you can reach out to me and share that with me. But I'll always keep that boundary and that buffer appropriately so per our charter between staff and council.
Mine are all positive. Please know that too. I don't want anybody listening to take it differently. Mine are all positive, and I think that they need to be recognized for that. So I'll send you an email, okay?
Okay.
Is that appropriate?
Yes, you can. And feel free if, when under council communications, feel free to share positive thoughts and things like that about staff members. Staff loves to hear that positive reinforcement and they really appreciate it. So that's appropriate as well.
Okay, thank you. I'll take advantage of that next time. I'm done, Meredith. Wake up.
That's okay. That's okay. I just had a question, June. I was looking at the memo and I think it's the final page, the key steps. How long does this take and when is this scheduled? So I know it's coming up, but it looks like a pretty significant process. So how long do you anticipate it taking?
The entire process?
Well, the key steps for each appointee, there's 6 different steps. So how many meetings is that? Is it multiple meetings?
The simple answer is no. I usually only participate in one meeting. I communicate to you strictly through email. We can also set up another Zoom meeting because we've got some new people, and I'm delighted to meet again. But once we pull the trigger on the process, it's pretty simple. Is that I'll be working behind the scenes with both Joe and Heather to make sure that I'm clear on the SurveyMonkey, what we're asking. If you want to weigh in on feedback to make sure, it's going to be very simple. It's going to be the format, the template, just put into a SurveyMonkey format to say, here's the competency, here's a quick definition to remind you of what that competency is, and then here's your rating on a scale of exceeds this or whatever your rating process is, and then your narrative comments. I gather all the information behind the scenes. I'm communicating. I'm triggering emails to both Joanna and to Heather to say, it's time for you to complete your self-evaluation. We've got to do the SurveyMonkey. And then my meeting with you, since we're only evaluating a couple of appointees, I hesitate to give a timeline because the answer, the best consultant answer is always, it depends, right? How long will it take? Well, it depends, right? It depends on you and your process and how comfortable you are with it. So let me just give you a couple of examples. I did the city manager and the city attorney performance review for one of my municipalities. Again, that was Arvada. This is the fourth time we've done it. They're familiar with me. They're familiar with the process. That took less than 2 hours because they are real clear on the process. I did another municipality, and we did just one person, a city manager. And this was the first time this city council participated in the process. And I say this with all love in my heart. They were a very chatty group. They all wanted to communicate and all had something to say. And they wanted the forum to say it. And I want to afford that opportunity. My job is to manage the time and the outcome and not cut people off. But I also have to make sure that, we're in a time-bound format. It took probably almost, with a break, 2 hours just for one city appointee, the city manager. I did one for 3 appointees: city manager, city judge, and the city attorney, the judge, and the city manager. And with this one municipality, we did all 3 of them in 2.5 hours. So just to give you an idea of how much time we would devote to the actual consensus discussion, to give you a framework. And I know that Heather, you and Joe, when we look at this process, we're going to have to come back with a timeline and say, it takes at least a week or so to prepare the SurveyMonkey, and then we have to send it out and then give people at least a couple of weeks to answer that. So we're going to have to go through, and Joe, I'll leave it to you because I think you and Heather crafted an original timeline, which has changed dramatically.
So I think what I'm looking at is, because like when you say one meeting, are we not doing step 1? Step 1 seems to be the biggest part. Is it says meet with council to identify key performance criteria. We haven't done that yet, right? So isn't that a significant meeting, Joe?
You actually have already done that work. You don't need Ms. Ramos, because in the evaluation tool, both the rating system and the behaviors that identify whether or not they're meeting the rating system, those have already been developed. So you don't need that piece. Really what you're looking at for meetings with Ms. Ramos as a council, at least the way it's designed for you to just have the one meeting where she's helping you with the data you've provided her to get the consensus conversation, because the tools are already in place. And that was part of what both your employees and what you said worked well, was the tools that we've already designed that have the competencies in them.
Okay, so maybe I'm just confused because I'm looking at, like I said, page 30 of 30, the 6 steps. So because it says Ms. Ramos will provide in advance a draft for consideration and review for each appointee position. So have we received that draft? Are we going to receive that soon?
I don't think you need Ms. Ramos for that because you've already done that work. What you really need her for is the coordination of the steps and the facilitation of your meetings.
Okay, so why does it say that on step one? That's what I'm asking. Heather?
Let me clarify, if I may, Mayor Leidy.
Okay.
I believe June provided this because this is an example of a process that she uses. So what she's going to do is work with our process. And so that our process is designed, and she's going to incorporate the changes that have been identified this evening. And then she'll put that in a draft timeline with Joe's help. And then we'll get that back to council. So this wasn't meant to be confusing. It's not intended to say it's a different process or this is the process. It was intended to be illustrative of on the backside of her biography to show the work that she has done and a typical process that she uses.
I just assumed that meant if we were using her, we were using her process. So, okay. So can someone outline our process? I think maybe that's why we have questions. Or can you just at least tell me where we're headed?
Joe, I'll let you do that because you sent me the calendar and the key steps.
Yes. Is it possible for me to share from my computer? I could pull up an example if that would be helpful. Or do you just simply want the outline of what the looks like? I'm confused.
Well, there is some confusion on my part if we have presented June's process, but we're not using it. So I'm reading it as if this is what's happening. That's why I was asking the questions of June, like, how much time do you expect those key steps 1 through 6 to take? She said 1 meeting. That didn't make sense to me. So that's why I'm referring to that document as if that's our process going forward. If you can point me to that, I'm happy to either project it. If you haven't given it to us yet, when will we see it?
Mayor, if you go to, and Joe, I think this will help. If you go to page 12 of the PDF,
okay,
and look for slide 13 that talks about process and timing.
Okay.
So the first step in this process is to contract with the third-party facilitator.
Okay.
Let's see, process and timing. Let me see. So it's page 12.
Oh, not 11?
Well, so, I mean, we can even start as far back as, so when the process was designed, the intent was to select an external third-party facilitator in February to manage all the processes for the year. So for all 4 council appointees. And June was going to be the start of each evaluation cycle. And then there would be informal check-ins. And those were the 2 check-ins that Joe mentioned earlier in our presentation that were slated to take place in September and January, and then have the formal review prior to the end of the cycle happen in May. Now, you see here, council meets prior to evaluation meetings to discuss group ratings, key discussion topics, and proposed compensation changes. And then council meets with each employee for the evaluation discussion. So those are broad steps. And in the initial design of the system, Joe had put together a detailed timeline of what should happen in each respective month. And I did not bring that forward tonight because it would get super confusing. And if council supports working with June, what we'll do is we'll update that that timeline, and I'll share that with you either via email or at a future meeting as a discussion item if it's necessary. So the facilitator, the intent is for the facilitator to oversee the process. So I'm not overseeing the process. Joanna's not overseeing the process, nor is Corey or the judge. And they're that conduit between, the council appointees and then you as council members. Now, human resources plays a role in this, and that would, in this this year, Jason's our interim HR director. And so he'll be providing you with the compensation information. And so that's pretty much it from a really broad overview. But June works for you. She walks you through the process. And if somewhere along the way, you as a council feel like you need something more, then you need to ask her for that, and she'll adjust based on that. So to Councilmember Brown's earlier comment about, can we have a mock run through of what the actual evaluation meeting will look like? So in advance, say, of my evaluation, if you want to do a mock run through, June can work with you to walk you through that, setting that agenda and really recommending and advising you on what steps should take place during that meeting. Does that help?
Sort of, not really, but hold on, Becky. So the question I'm still stuck on is, so this second page was just meant to be like an addendum to your resume? Is that what and then I'm not supposed to be looking at that for your process. So because Becky was asking questions and I'm asking questions about what does your process look like for us in the next couple months, can you provide that to us, and when?
If I can clarify, let's first define process. So the process is already in place that Joe put together for you all, and the process is the series of steps that culminates in a performance review that you will deliver without me in the room, with your appointee, your city manager or your city clerk. So the process is the steps. My process was, Heather had first said, my council doesn't know anything about you, and give them an example of a typical process. So that, I think that's why that document, Heather, was put in there to let you know. But it's clear, and it was made clear to me, if I am chosen as facilitator, can I use an existing process? The answer is simply yes, because it's almost identical to a process that I have used. Now, with other councils, I have actually had to help them craft the performance competencies, the tool, and the actual process. And that's why I said in that first step is that I contract with you to identify the process. So that was just an example of what I do as a consultant facilitator. We don't need to do that first step because, as Joe had mentioned, that your process is already in place and it's a seamless process. And I'm just going to jump in with a timeline to help you determine what are the next steps. I think then also, we use the word process a lot. We were getting feedback on the process. So in her great facilitator fashion wants to know what worked about the process, what didn't work, so that I can jump in and make sure that I deliver what you need and want as a facilitator, okay? We are not redesigning the process. We are making some tweaking and improvements primarily around some critical things such as using a SurveyMonkey tool and a facilitator style with a structure that allows you to have the right conversation. We are not redesigning the steps of the process.
Okay, so then as far as purpose goes, tonight is council saying, yes, we're comfortable working with June, and that's it. Like that's essentially the purpose of today. And then we start looking forward. I would say one of the things that I was worried about is you had said that in the beginning, you're going to primarily communicate with us through emails. That was something that wasn't necessarily effective with our last facilitator, is we got email after email after email, and I got lost in them, to be honest. Not all council responded in a timely fashion. And we saw that in the feedback. So if that's the same process, if that's the same strategy, I'm a little concerned about the effectiveness of communicating heavily via email as opposed to having a meeting. So
I'm delighted to have as many meetings as you need and want. and jump in and for me, the first step is to, if you choose to use my services, then the first thing that I will do is I will work with Joe and Heather to create a timeline and say, what is a reasonable amount of time to actually accomplish this? I put together a spreadsheet that identifies the core deliverables, the time, the due date, and who does what by when, and what my role is, and what council's role is, and what the appointee's role is, for example, complete an evaluation form. I'm delighted after the completion of that timeline to jump in on one of your study sessions and present that to you and walk you through it rather than just start engaging in email. So I'll meet with you as needed. But once the process begins and the key steps trigger certain outcomes and deliverables, tell me how else you want me to communicate with you. Certainly we start with email. I can be a real good nag, but that's not very helpful, because one of the things I was concerned about was the feedback was that some council members didn't provide feedback and didn't fill out the form. And I think before we close out this session that, regardless of who you use as a facilitator, you need a commitment from each other that you take this process seriously and that you're willing to do the upfront work and provide the necessary feedback in that format so that everybody has a level playing field to say, we've all done our homework, we've all provided our analysis, because I don't want to be sending a bunch of emails to say, I haven't heard from you all, I still need to get your feedback. I don't think that's very productive. So I think we need to draw a line in the sand and then say, we have a commitment to, once the timeline is set, that we will do our homework and provide you, June, with this information that you can consolidate into a document for the meeting that we're going to have.
I completely agree with you. I think I misunderstood the purpose of today. I thought today was going to be the timeline. We have quite a few council member hands up. So I have Council Member Peterson, and then Brown, and then Goff.
Thank you, Mayor. Just quickly, June, thank you very much for being here with us tonight. And thanks for walking us through the process and answering our questions. Appreciate that very much. I really admire your thoroughness on this, and you're obviously a dedicated professional in terms of how thorough you are to make sure everything is touched upon. But one of the things too, I'll just give my 2 cents on this. This seems inordinately complex at this level right now, and it seems like, I mean, listen, I want to do an evaluation that's fair and thorough, but I don't need to build the ship, and I don't need to. I want to do the process and do it right. And we've said the word process so much. I don't know what the heck process means, and I'm not worried about it right now. I trust you on this, but I really don't want to get bogged down in the mechanics of the weeds that makes this go on longer than it need be, that pushes other important council business to a back burner. And, I want to do this, thorough, everybody's voice, but at the same time, brevity and expediency would be values in this that I would encourage.
And I'll agree with you on that. For me, my new saying is simple is best, less is more. And once we identify the timeline, there will probably be 6 to 8 significant steps. So if, for example, in the timeline, which will contain all the steps, city manager and city clerk complete self-evaluation form and send to facilitator. That is a core deliverable. Another core deliverable is June works with council and sends out the Survey Monkey and gives you 2 weeks to respond. That's a core deliverable. So we're going to translate what sounds complex into some very simple steps that trigger a core deliverable, a due date, and identified responsibilities. So I'm hearing, let's keep it simple. I'm right there with you, because the world's already too complex. We don't need any more complexity in our life. Thank you. Good feedback.
Councilmember Brown.
I should just sing and you'll tell me if you can hear me. First of all, I can't wait to get home to my own computer and not play with this long distance stuff. I don't know if this question is for June or for Joe. And it kind of addresses Randall's question too. We went from a very complex, convoluted process into a very streamlined process. And I think for our new council people, it might be really beneficial because last year we used a paper, we didn't have SurveyMonkey left. So it'd be very beneficial for them to see how we condense the subjects. And it's not, doing the evaluation is nowhere near as time consuming and it's much more valuable than we previously had. And I think it would help them understand where we're going, because they've not been in the process. They're newly elected and we need to give them the benefit of seeing the form before we ask them to participate in it.
May I respond to that, Mayor Lady?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great. Yes, thank you for that. And Councilor Peterson, I agree with you. The complexity is actually on Ms. Ramos' hands. Council's role, as Councilor Brown has already said, is fairly limited in this. And so while we have gotten kind of deep into the details, and I will own the confusion tonight, because tonight was two purposes. One was from my side to say, what do we need to do to tweak tools and the timeline and all of that? And then the second was to introduce you to Ms. Ramos as a potential facilitator, coordinator to make your lives easy in this process versus complicated. So my apologies for not clarifying that from the beginning. So the feedback I was seeking was those tweaks. And now what she can bring forward are the steps. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but let me just give you kind of a quick overview of what it looks like for your two employees, okay? It starts out with Ms. Ramos actually working with the stakeholders to start to gather feedback on their experiences, and it's based on the same competencies that you are ultimately evaluating so that you actually get data from stakeholders to help you complete your form. In addition, these employees write up a self-evaluation, again, based on the same criteria and competencies that you are evaluating. You receive all that data from Ms. Ramos, her job to do the cat herding and get that all together so that when you actually are through the SurveyMonkey tool writing up your comments, you actually have not only your own experience, but you have both the employees and the stakeholders' feedback to weigh in on that. Then you come together as a group after Ms. Ramos has done okay, here's what everybody said and where y'all are kind of leaning for some things. Then she goes through what she's already described much better than I can, how she facilitates you to kind of an executive summary of your feedback and shared ratings. And then she works with you to script out what's your conversation. You then meet with your two employees to give your feedback directly. They will have received written materials that Ms. Ramos has put together for you. So at that point, you're talking about, other than the time that you took to write up your comments, one meeting with Ms. Ramos, and then a meeting with each of those two employees. You then have two more meetings during the year with each of those employees for very informal conversation, just to say how the last 4 months gone. So it's that ongoing conversation. With the judge and with the attorney, it's even more simplified. Their job is to come together with all the materials. They fill out a questionnaire. Ms. Ramos gets, again, data from stakeholders. You don't have to prepare anything for that meeting. It is simply an informal conversation between you and your contracted employees to say, how are things going? Here's what we like. If you want to have a discussion or just to get kind of feedback like you did tonight from the judge. So those are the primary responsibilities on council's part. Like I said, the real work here is Ms. Ramos to make all of it happen for you. So.
Got it. Councilmember Goff.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I wanted to say that I finally figured out how to raise my hand electronically. It is possible. So I did it. I think looking at this from the perspective of a person who's had to have an annual, well, probably everybody in the workforce, an annual evaluation, and also not being involved in, sounds like kind of a confusing process last year. I'm satisfied with the explanations that I've heard about what we're going to be doing. I know it seems like from the very beginning we have a timeline or kind of a deadline to do the city manager and the city clerk pretty quickly, because the next one is supposed to happen by the fall. So it seems like, this isn't something that I'm understanding to drag out. And so I would just like to say that I would support having June Ramos be the facilitator. I appreciate everything that Joe has done to explain things. I feel pretty comfortable, going forward with this process, and I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. City Manager Geyer, did you want to add something?
I was just going to elaborate on a couple components that Joe talked about to make this really tangible, the process, bring it home for you. So as a result of my review, and this is true for Joanna last year, we each have performance goals. So we're going to Joanna and I are going to put together what we call a self-assessment. And if you flip to pages 3, 4, 5, 6 of your packet, this is the process. This is where Joe has the process outlined for the two of us. And so the goal setting started last year. And so I'm going to provide you, I have 3 goals. And for the new council members, I provided you a copy of my performance goal memo at the time of orientation. And so I can also share that with I will share it with council as a whole as part of an attachment to my self-assessment. So you're going to receive that self-assessment from us through June. And I wanted to clarify stakeholders because I know that's a term we're using. So for me, my stakeholders are all of my direct reports. There's 11 of them. The city attorney, and then I made a note to myself that I'll likely request to add the judge to that as well, because I'm working pretty closely with Judge Balehash. So as well as the city clerk. So those are my stakeholders. So when Joe talked about the Survey Monkey that goes out to stakeholders, there's going to be a Survey Monkey link that goes out to all of my direct reports, Corey, the judge, city clerk, and they're going to provide feedback on me based on those 3 competencies that were developed and designed into the system, which I believe is included in the PowerPoint. I believe it's strategy and vision, leadership, and communication. Those are the 3 competencies that I'm evaluated on. So I just wanted to clarify those pieces because we say stakeholders, we talk about the process. So hopefully that helps clarify. And then with all of that information, you get to that piece where June's going to walk you through your feedback, agree upon ratings to move the process forward.
I think that's, if I can weigh in, that's the beauty of the system, is your feedback is based on several data points. First is your own experience working with your city manager and your city clerk. Some of you are newer, so you have less time with those individuals, but you've seen them in action. They've communicated with you. They've provided you leadership and data and communication and presentation. So it's your own analysis of that person. You will also have the data point of the self-evaluation of both your city clerk and city manager, their own assessment, and you'll read that document and you'll weigh that against how they perceive their strengths and their accomplishments and challenges and how they overcame them and whatnot. And that'll help you fill in the blanks around, this person's strengths and areas of development. And then the third piece of data, of course, then is the stakeholder Survey Monkey, where those stakeholders, primarily the direct reports, and then some of their peers, will also add additional insight to your analysis. So your job, while Joe was talking about the importance of all the work that I'll be doing behind the scenes, gathering data and providing you information. Your job is the thinking part, which is you got to fill out your own Survey Monkey and read the data, read the Survey Monkey and read the self-evaluation, and the amount of time it takes you to fill out that Survey Monkey to say, this is my best objective opinion about how well those competencies have been achieved and their goals and objectives and what the strengths are and what I personally would like to share with other council members, areas of development to make a better relationship between your city clerk and your city manager. So there'll be some thinking and reflecting and writing on your part to meet those deadlines and to capture that, all of that. My job is to gather all the information, give it to you in a timely fashion according to an agreed upon timeline. So I don't know if Councilmember Peterson, if that makes it feel a little less complex and it just gives you some core deliverables and gives you a clear idea of what your role will be in the process. So I think that was a great comment on your part.
So if we don't have the timeline yet, when will we receive the timeline of next steps?
What a great question. So once you say, yes, city manager, create a contract with June Ramos, the facilitator, I'll put light a fire under Joe and Heather and get Joanna's input as well about what is a reasonable amount of time. And again, Councilmember Goff, right? We want to make sure that we work and accelerate the process to meet some timelines, but I don't want to create an artificial timeline. We have to give enough time. It's kind of scary to think we're already in the middle of July, almost the end of July, and fall is just around the corner. And it does take time to send out the Survey Monkey, for example, and give you some time. And my experience typically is, I would say that a little bit better, is that most council prefer at least 2 weeks, 2 working weeks and a weekend to put that together, because you all have busy lives and you attend council and you have families and you have jobs and whatnot. So if 2 weeks is a reasonable time, I'm going to be working backwards with Joe and Heather and Joanna to say, what is a reasonable amount of time. But I can, depending on Joe's schedule and whatnot, and making sure I understand all the elements of her process, it seems like we should be able to carve something out fairly quickly in the next week or two. Am I being too idealistic? Because I don't know your schedule.
Yeah, because council's not asking for major tweaks to what we originally designed. It sounds like it got off track last year. So from our end, I can work with Ms. Ramos quickly, and she and Ms. Geyer can get you the information that you need quickly.
And then again, Mayor, I would be delighted, rather than just send that timeline to you via email, I'm delighted to take a few moments at a future study session as it fits into the timeline to walk you through the timeline, answer any final questions, and make sure we're ready to hit the ground running. So it doesn't have to, I appreciate, I miss face-to-face. I miss actually being in the same room with people. So we make the best of these formats. And so I'm delighted to work with you again in an executive session format. And also, one of the things that I've been counseled by all of my city attorneys for all of the work I've done, all of my communication states in the subject field, working papers, executive session, I give the topic, do not reply all, right? Because we want to maintain the protocol of the ex parte communication. So I will be making sure that I'm sending you information, and then when you respond, make sure you respond only to me. Now, if it's a question that has to go back to everybody, then we'll figure that out. So I keep that communication very clean and maintain the integrity of the executive session.
Okay.
So it's a long answer to your simple question. In the next week or two, and as soon as I can communicate with Joe and Heather and Joanna in the next couple of days to just crank out a quick timeline and get some quick feedback from everybody on that. I want to get you something sooner rather than later.
Okay. Does anybody else have questions for June or Joe or anyone else? Okay, so I think we're good to go, having June be our facilitator, and we'll await the timeline soon.
Thank you.
Oh, well, hello. Who's this little furry friend in the corner?
We talked about herding cats. This is Charlie.
My experience, that would be easier than city councils. Oh, I'm just kidding.
Yes. No, it's real.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for your confidence, man, with me and in me, and I appreciate that. And at any point, if you need anything from me, I will be responsive and get you what you need.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everybody. Joe, I'll be in touch with you tomorrow.
Sounds great. Thank you all. I appreciate your time and deep thought on this tonight too.
Great feedback.
Awesome.
Take care.
Okay. Are there any other items tonight for council? Councilmember Brown?
I have not figured out how to wave my hand. I just wanted to say that I know that I was unable due to personal reasons to attend last Thursday's meeting, but I want you to know that I have felt like our meetings have gotten more productive, that we're behaving like a team again. And I'm really excited to work with everybody and stay on the right path and and just make sure that we're doing things right and that we're addressing the needs of the city. So I just wanted to say, after watching the video from Thursday's meeting and how I felt when I left Monday's meeting, I think that we have a great group that works well together 95% of the time. But I just wanted to share that compliment because I got some emails from residents, about different things. And I started to worry that we were spiraling into a different direction and we had so many other things to do and we needed to pass on some of our other stuff and let the qualified people do it. The point of my little speech here is that I enjoyed last Monday's meeting. I enjoyed today's meeting, and I really enjoy the cohesiveness, and I personally would like to see it continue.
Thank you, Becky. I just want to hear Ashley's voice. I don't think we heard you or Antonio at all today. How are you both?
I didn't have much to say. I think you guys know when I do have something to say, I will speak up. Thank you. Thanks for the chance to say hi.
Yeah, just checking in. Antonio, how are you?
I'm fine. I understood the process, so I was kind of like, can we just say we're going to hire her and let's go home?
Well, put your hand up and jump in there. I'm confused.
No, everybody has questions they want to ask. Yeah, I'm doing fine. Thank you.
Okay. Nice to see you. Well, hello, everybody. I hope you have a great rest of your week. Well, no, sorry. I'll see you again in 2 days. I keep forgetting Wednesday's a thing. Wednesday, we will be back.
Is that a 6 o'clock meeting or 7 o'clock meeting?
6 o'clock.
6.
Study session.
Thank
All
you.
right. Well, have a good day and a half, and we'll see you on Wednesday. We are adjourned. Goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody. Look, I got it off mute.